Hey everybody, welcome to a new podcast called the Burden of Leadership Podcast. I'm Paul TenHaken.
I'm Vaney Hariri.
And I am Tamien Dysart.
This podcast, guys, was really formed as a result of us getting together on a regular basis talking about, the opportunities, struggles, challenges of modern day leadership. The last 3 or 4 years has been a grind to be in leadership, and we're always kind of pontificating when we get together talking about leadership. So we're like, you know what? I've always wanted to do a podcast on the topic of leadership. I know there's a lot out there, but I think the three of us have very different perspectives on a lot of different things, but also very similar perspectives on a lot of things. So that's how this was formed. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so am I. It's just another example or opportunity for us to example how people can have real conversations, because when we sit with you or a whole lot of other people in this community that we agree with sometimes and other times don't, we have really good, healthy conversations. And we realize we like each other and we care about each other and we want good for each other. But as soon as it gets online or as soon as it gets whatever, it turns into this nasty, negative thing. Yeah. And this is just a great opportunity for us to just sit and just talk and work through anything like that and be able to show people that it can be done and that if you're willing to do it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. We talk about leadership. Obviously, we do leadership development. Obviously, you're a leader in our community. And too often everyone has an opinion about something, but the idea of burden of leadership, I forget, one of you had threw out the name, loved it, I grabbed a hold of it, because a burden is that a heavy load typically. And what's interesting about that word burden for me is one that often we pick up willingly, right? The burden of leadership, it doesn't have to be picked up, but we pick it up willingly. And in a world of social media, everyone's throwing ideas out there or throwing opinions, probably more so. Very few people pick up the mantle and said, I'm going to wear this to carry this thing forward beyond the benefit of myself.
And for those who are listening, who maybe don't know who these three yahoos are, by way of background, I've been the mayor of Sioux Falls, South Dakota since 2018. Prior to that, no experience in public service, hated politics, to be totally honest with you, but was in entrepreneurship and felt a calling, for lack of a better term, just to really get involved in my community, to do more, to give back, to lead in a different way. And so my background and what I hopefully bring to this podcast is a variety of different, kind of leadership lenses and experiences, most recently as an elected official in a time when, quite honestly, it sucks to be an elected official. The last couple of years, I mean, it's been really challenging. I think when we were talking about that, that's why we kind of came up with that, that title of the burden of leadership, because daily, and I'm not exaggerating, daily people will say to me, man, I'm glad you're doing that. I could never do that job. Everyone says that. Everyone says, I could never do that. No, you could. Anybody could. It's, do you want to? Do you want to expose yourself to the criticism and the crap that comes along with it, and the sacrifice and the loss of anonymity and all those things for a cause that's bigger than you, in this case community, and advancing a community and making it better. So that's the lens by which I approach our conversations, is most recently now as a public official.
Yeah, and so me being one half of Think 3D in terms of the founders, and we specialize in leadership development training, organizational culture, and community culture. And one of the things that I just notice all the time is that I hear people talking themselves out of the responsibility of leadership. I hear people all the time talking about they, them. I hear people talking about the government, those people, or whatever, and it's never us, it's never me, it's never I, it's never the part that I play in it. And none of this can work if people don't take ownership for the part that they play in it. And so I'm always about exempling to people how to do it, because I never want to assume that people know how to do something I want them to do. I never want to assume that they've been taught. I never want to assume that they're good at it. And so this is one of those situations where I just thought it would be a great opportunity for us to display it and to be able to say, you're going to say some things that don't rub me the right way. And how do we work through that? Because at the end of the day, what I know to be a fact is that you want a healthy, safe environment for you and your family. I know that to be true. No matter what else about our background, I know that to be true. And I feel that way about everybody in Sioux Falls. And I want to make sure that we at least really do the work of a community to example and teach how to have a healthy dialogue.
Yeah, one of my mantras that I picked up probably a year and a half ago was live your highest truth. I don't care what religion you come from, whatever your background is, if whatever your highest ideals were, if people would just say, these are my highest ideals, and every single day they woke up and put those highest ideals into practice, like actively put them into practice, think how much different our country would be, our communities would be. And that idea of, as Vaney said it, responsibility. Whose responsibility is it in a world where, again, people just are internet gangsters, keyboard bullies, those type of things? I had a lunch meeting recently with somebody, and I was telling him all the things that we're doing in the community, and he was just taken aback. He's like, man, why? He knows the background of Think 3D. Like, man, y'all are killing it over here. You could just ride this thing out. And that responsibility, if not us, who? Right? I mean, again, I think about even for you jumping in to be mayor, and people are like, oh man, I could never do that type of thing. If you didn't do it, who's going to do it, right? Obviously, someone would step up and do that. However, is it the right person at the right time, and being willing to pick up that burden and saying, I have a responsibility to make my community better, to make my city better, to make people around me better. And that's a responsibility that transparently most people just aren't willing to do the work necessary to get that thing across the finish line.
So though the last couple of years, though, what I have seen with leadership, and we're going to unpack this in future episodes, is there, in my opinion, is this increasing chasm and glut of good leaders. There's less and less people willing to put their hand up and be like, I'm willing to put my name out there. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to run for office. I'm willing to put myself out there in my community because of how vitriolic conversations have been. You talked about the keyboard commandos, and it's a lot easier to step back and stay comfortable than it is to put yourself in the fray.
Yes.
At least that's what I feel. You guys see and feel that same thing?
Well, actually, that's what I was just about to ask you. I'm interested in your perspective because, people say I couldn't do this, which insinuates, we all want people better than us to run the country. But then we talk down to the people that do. Right. I'm interested from your perspective of that. Like people, they say I couldn't be the mayor because they don't think they would be a good mayor because they wouldn't be able to keep their composure, because they wouldn't be able to work with people that they don't like, because they da-da-da-da-da. And then when you're in that situation and you have to do all those things, people get hypercritical of it.
Yeah.
There's a hypocrisy in there that's nice, safe, and warm that people get to sit in. And I'm just interested from an actual person who's holding the seat in our city, like how does that land on you?
Well, I mean, you learn a tremendous amount about yourself when you stick yourself into an uncomfortable position you never thought you'd have. I mean, trust me, this has never been a dream of mine to be a mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, even 10 years ago, I'd be like, no way. I'm one of those guys, like, who would want to do that? But the older you get, and I'm 45, I got 3 kids, 17, 14, and 10, you start to change your perspective on what success looks like, and you start to move more towards a focus on significance. Like, there's the world is filled with all kinds of successful people who have success by worldly standards and monetary success, and maybe they have fame, but their significance is very shallow. Yeah. How will they be eulogized? What are they going to be remembered for? And I know you guys spend a lot of time thinking about that too. It's like, yeah, you could just focus on the ones and zeros of the business 100. And make more money. Yeah. But how are you leaving the community better than you found it? And what significance are you having? I think that's where true leaders really shine, is when they're looking beyond the self-gratification of what's in this for me. And it's like, how can I use whatever I've been blessed with to benefit other people? And credit be damned, no one may ever notice or know. Yeah. But that will make me feel like I've made an impact on those around me. Yesterday I got a message from a dude. He tweeted at me. He said, "Hey, dumbass Paul TenHaken, when are you going to legalize sports gambling in the state, you idiot?" And I'm just like, man, this guy needs a civics lesson. Like, right. I'm only the mayor for 80 square miles. This is how laws are made. I don't have the authority to do that. But when I get messages like that, I'm like, why am I doing this again? Like, to get these clowns that just reach out and just want to rip you down. And
well, and even to think that is like that's the best way to get what you want from me.
Right.
Like what would
You
make
think that's
think
effective?
like what would make
That's
you
effective. You need to take a Dale Carnegie course, my
Yeah,
friend. This
yeah.
is not. This
Oh, let me pick that up and make that my number one
yeah,
priority now.
sounds good. You sound like a
Yeah.
great fella.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I do want to dig a little bit deeper on that with you just a quick second. Because you're a different cat than when you came in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you're a different man. I think anybody that know you on both sides of it can see that. And you know, you dealt with some crazy stuff. Global pandemic, 3 natural disasters by my count. You know, community unrest and all of those other type of things. Challenges, a chief of police transition, different things that happened over there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so just tell me real quick, just what was that change like for you? How does this impact you as a man, as a father, as like just a person?
I think someone asked me once the other day, like, they're like, what's your superpower? Do you have a superpower? I said, I don't like that question really because it's very narcissistic sounding, but my level of empathy is way higher today than it used to be.
Yeah.
Because I'm around people, I see people now in different, life conditions, different scenarios, different economic classes that I never had exposure to before, and my level of empathy towards them is way greater than it ever was even 4 years ago. And I think that comes from going through social unrest, right? Going through the pandemic and realizing, listen, people aren't just pissed because they have to wear a mask. They maybe lost their grandpa from COVID, right?
Yeah.
They maybe have a kid who has leukemia and they're worried about this kid dying from this thing. So I need to have a level of empathy that I've never had to have before. And if there's one like magic skill that I wish our whole community could somehow acquire, it'd be a level of empathy that allows them to put themselves in other people's shoes like they've never had to before. Because I think that's when special things can happen, when you can start to understand your community in a whole nother level.
For sure.
When I think about leadership and the burden of it, a word that comes to mind is sacrifice, right? Sacrifice is to give up something of value for something else. Like everything is a sacrifice. If you're sitting at home and doing nothing, you're sacrificing potential success to do what you're doing right now. Other side of it, if you want to really make an impact, you're going to sacrifice some things along the way. Let me toss this to you first, Vaney. Obviously, you've been involved in this community work for 20 plus years on boards, various things. Obviously, we do a lot today with Think 3. What does the word sacrifice bring to mind for you as to behind the curtains, what it's taken to be a leader in this community?
I gotta be honest with you. It hits me different because my engagement into the community was out of necessity. So I never actually viewed it as a sacrifice. It never felt that way to me because I needed it. You know, when I first really came into the scene, I had been helping at some after school programs, one of the first Presbyterian when I was going to school at Edison, when I first moved, like day one moving, to Sioux Falls. And I just knew that I wanted to be in a good energy and I wanted to lead and all those other type of things. And my uncle was the president of the NAACP, fast forward to when I'm about 19, 20. And he couldn't go to a meeting. And there was a meeting starting for the Race Relations Committee at the time. And somebody had been spraying racial epithets on a bridge or something like that. And so people came together, judges, lawyers, police, doctors, regular citizens and all that. And my uncle couldn't go, so he asked me to go for him. And so I go and I sit down at this thing and I just feel the enormity of it, like all of these important people in this room, And there's 2 major takeaways that I got out of it. One was I realized that there was a lot of white people in here that didn't need to be here, didn't have to be here. That registered for me. I saw all these people that were, some people wealthy, well off, powerful, whatever. Their lives were pretty good. And they were there trying to figure out this that really affected me primarily. But then I realized that it didn't affect me only. That these people didn't want to live in a city where those type of things were happening. And there were people who didn't want to live in a city where I felt what I was feeling. And it was like, well, you want to be here too? You don't even really need to be here. But they did need to be there. And that clicked for me. And that just said civil duty. Okay, it's not about just my stuff. It's like if you really care about your community being great, you got to show up for other people. Boom, huge. Fireworks go off. Then the other thing is I sit there quietly and, I'm intimidated by the room a bit. I'm young. I don't think it's my turn or whatever. And I sit there, but I listen to some of the things that people are saying. And it's all kind-hearted, but it's misguided in a lot of ways. People are saying things that don't make sense. At least they don't make sense if you come from the experience. And after I wait long enough, I work up the courage and I say something and everybody's like, oh, wow, we never thought of that. That's so crazy. Da, 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 da. And then I thought, man, what would happen if I wasn't here?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have corrected this narrative? Who would have given this context? Who would have given this insight? Who would have made it so that this actually makes sense? And that's when I realized, like, I got to be in the room. There may not be a me in the room.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been a me in the room. I got to be in the room, and I got addicted to being in the room, which is why I'm a habitual board member. And so
If
from
you're
that
not at the
moment,
table, you're on the menu.
you know what I mean? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So after that moment, for me, like, it was just like I couldn't imagine anything else. Nothing else made sense to me.
Yeah.
So for me, it framed up a little bit different for me early.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
I was just with you, man. Sacrifice obviously is, you can't just meander about town as a normal Joe Schmo. People recognize you, XYZ, different expectations. Again, dynamic change in your family, especially coming off of a very successful business. You could have just rode off to the sunset and did something else, whatever. Talk about sacrifice. I mean, the burden of leadership is different.
I'll tell you a burden right now, if I'm just being really transparent and vulnerable, is that, my wife and I even talk about if we'll live in Sioux Falls when my time is up. I got a little over 3.5 years, and is this a place where I can still be? And what I mean by that is, you think of like a pastor maybe who retires from a church where he was leading that church.
Yeah.
He doesn't keep going to that church.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, my time here at this church was done. I'm going to go somewhere else
Yeah.
and let the next leader take over. And I don't know if I'll belong here anymore. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but you talk about a sacrifice you make, and like I may give up a town I love in order to, send the elevator down to the next set of leaders that are going to take it from here, and maybe sell tacos in Tallahassee, or stay. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But it's a very disturbing, and kind of a sad thing to think about. We'll maybe be here. I don't know. I don't know what God's plan is, from that standpoint. But those are discussions Jill and I had to have when we decided to do this. Like, hey, we're going to be giving up a lot, man. We're going to be giving up a lot for our life, for our kids, for our anonymity, for our income, for all these things. Do we really want to do this? I tell you, there are days when it's like, yeah, I'm glad we did. And then there's days like, it's Shawshank Redemption. You're chalking the marks on the wall, like how many days are left,
For me, I've been thinking about this actually a lot lately. I go back to really 3 years ago or more. Most people in this community had no idea who I was because I climbed the corporate ladder. I did my thing. I had my friend groups. If you didn't work for me or with me, you probably didn't know who I was. And really in a short period of time, 3 years, when I really started getting on the Sioux Empire Leadership Council, joined the chamber board. And one thing when you talk about empathy for me is for most individuals, you can't have compassion from a distance. And a lot of people, either consciously or unconsciously, don't want to get close to the problems because they know to some degree, once you see the problem, you can't just turn a blind eye. And as we have, so many opportunities in our community, I have, my younger girls, I'm thinking about what type of community do I want to leave them? My youngest is 9 years old at current. I love the city, born and raised, but I'm super aware that if we don't have more people stepping up to do more, it's not going to be the same community for them. We have real issues happening right now, part of the reason for this podcast, so we can talk about real issues. And so the sacrifice for me, I was reading a book recently from Ed Milet called The Power of One, Power One More. And, he talked about, and it's not about the financial side of it necessarily, but he's like, you look at the great titans, your Fords, your Carnegies. It started with one person who was willing to make that sacrifice to hit a certain level of success. And for me, success isn't about money, it's about impact. And so the sacrifice that I've asked myself, again, when I go home often late, most during the week, and to see my little girls, and I'm missing on that time, well, I'm thinking about what am I leaving for them, my grandkids, those type of things. So sacrifice, and I have the conversation with them. That's the other side of it too. I don't just say, Dad's doing it for something they can't see. They understand to a degree that I'm giving something up of value, my time with them, for something that I really believe in. And so they see that now very clearly, which I think is a big deal in a lot of ways.
Let me ask you this too, because this is interesting for me a little bit. Because you starting to do the community work that you've been doing was great for me in terms of empathy. You know, I was always doing community work for 20 years outside of my age bracket. So I was with people who were older, and you know, people at 20 weren't doing the type of work that I was doing for the most part. And I don't think people appreciate how much energy, effort goes into really building your community and doing all of those things. And I never pursued the business stuff the same way that people thought that I should. And people just thought I was going places and hanging out and talking about cool things and doing whatever. And I don't think people really appreciated the work that goes into all of that stuff. And seeing you sometimes come from meetings and things of that nature, and it's like, and I can imagine what it's like for you, where sometimes wading through stale thought processes and self-doubt and limiting beliefs and partisanship and yada, 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 like,
Yeah.
ay, sometimes.
It's easy to just want to toss it in and be like, this isn't worth it. I got way better ways I could be spending my time, different things I could be doing. And I think people underestimate how much work it is to keep a community unified, you know, and to be a community leader and to do different programs that build up leaders in the community. A lot of times people only see the outcome. It's like, oh, look at that great program. You know how much work went into that? How much time and effort and energy that could have been spent doing other things.
Yeah. Well, I love that when people say, like, you know what you should do? I almost automatically turn off because, hey, do what I've done. We give you the blueprint. Do what I've done to get what I've got, so then you can do the thing that you think I should do.
Yeah.
But again, people aren't willing to make the sacrifice in those spaces.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's why I know you got a couple gray hairs in your beard. Not too bad. He's got a little more. I'm almost total salt and pepper here. Like this is all. This is the burden of leadership right here.
Mine's wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom.
Mine's
I was just stressed. So.
Let me throw a monkey wrench in this real quick. How was Mike for you? How was Mayor Houston for you being a presence in the city? You know, I've had the opportunity to work through a few different administrations, so I understand the differences in people's styles. But for you, as a mayor who stuck around and was still here, how was that for you?
Well, Mayor Huther is our previous mayor of our city, great guy. I don't see him around much anymore. I think he knows his lane is not to be at ribbon cuttings, not to be at events. Because think if you went to a ribbon cutting today and the previous mayors are like, what's he doing here?
Right.
People would be like, what's he doing here? Well, why can't he be there? He's still involved in the city.
Right.
He's blood, sweat, and tears of the city. But you're looked at like, what are you still doing around?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to be that guy someday.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, the part of the reason I ran, and it's the same reason you guys do your community work, is I think we just feel that there's a desire and a hunger right now for the next generation of leadership to get unleashed in this community.
Yeah.
I think there's just a whole layer that's untapped that's like, wow, how can we turn this on and just put gas on this fire? And so for me, when I got elected, I was 40, just 40. So it was the right time, and I know that's why you guys spend a lot of time empowering the next generation of leader too, because who's the next Tamien and Vaney and others that are going to take some of this work and advance it?
Yeah. Let me just say too, I think it's interesting, and I'm really interested to see what you do there. I always think about like when the former presidents get together or whatever. Post-Trump is a little weird now because it's always kind of like whatever, but I always thought it was interesting because it said afterwards, like, we're Americans, like we all did our thing, but we're Americans now. We come together. So I'm interested to see how because I don't think it should be weird. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think it should be either.
It doesn't mean
and I
it won't
hope
be.
It's not. It doesn't mean it won't be though.
It doesn't mean that it won't be.
It doesn't mean it won't be.
So,
well, I know in future episodes we're going to have a ton of great topics to cover, a ton of great conversation. Looking forward to them. So for this time together, I thank you guys. We got more to come. So for the burden of leadership, I'm Paul. He's Vaney. He's Tamien. Looking forward to future conversations, and subscribe, do all the things that you need to do to make a podcast work.
click the button.
Click the button.
Do the thing.
Do the thing.
See you guys next time.